If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Memphis guard Dylan Brooks was given another example of how LeBron James does not play like an old man. At age 38, LeBron played 45 minutes last night and finished with 22 points, a career-high 20 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 block shots. He also made a dazzling layup in the final second of regulation to send the game into overtime. Not bad for a player who is supposed to be old. The Lakers closed out Memphis by 6 in OT to take a 3-1 lead in the best-of-7 series. Game 5 is Wednesday in Memphis. LeBron is the first Laker to put up 20 points and 20 rebounds in a playoff game since Shaq in 2004. At age 38, LeBron is also the oldest player in NBA history to have a 2020 game in the regular season or playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
You ready?
Excuse me. Now that I have your attention, may I ask you this question? Why do you believe police brutality continues to exist in this country? Do you believe it to be a systemic problem, or should we judge police misconduct on a case-by-case basis? And what's your opinion on the best course of action to solve the problem? Well, you have come to the right place. You're listening to LA's all-new progressive talk radio station. Of the people, by the people, for the people.
Hey, I sure appreciate that.
It's KBLA Talk 1580. And we got you covered round the clock. Racism, we got you. Progressive politics, we got you. Health and wellness education, we have you covered.
We're going to have to put it back in the hands of the people.
A black-owned and operated, evidence-based alternative radio station for progressive, open-minded people like you and me.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Welcome home, LA. We're all in this together.
Let's get it on.
It's KBLA Talk 1580, broadcasting from the heart of LA's Leimert Park. We've got a lot to talk about.
We are going to have to fight. We're going to have to struggle. We're going to have to struggle relentlessly to bring about some peace.
Work all night and a drink a rum. Daylight come and we want go home. Stack banana till the morning come. Daylight come and we want go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and we want go home. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. Daylight come and we want go home.
Rest in peace, Harry Belafonte. This towering figure of politics and pop culture, actually. And I can't wait to hear what Tavis Smiley has to say about him. They had a unique and close friendship for many years. So looking forward to the stories and the revelations that we'll hear today. I'm imagining we're probably going to hear some clips. I never got to interview Mr. Belafonte. I met him behind the scenes in activist circles, and I was happy for that interaction, as it were. We're being joined right now this hour by the historian and author, scholar, one of our great scholars. He is chair of the history department at University of Houston. He's got at least 1 million books that you can find on Amazon.com at a bookstore near you. Dr. Gerald Horne, good morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for coming on. I mean, of course, we have to start with Harry Belafonte. 96 years old, a life well lived, but still a huge loss.
Certainly, and I'm happy to see that some of the obituaries that I've skimmed thus far mention the fact that he was mentored by the late, great Paul Robeson, who I'm sure your audience is familiar with, an actor, singer, political activist, who paid a very stiff and heavy price because of his socialist beliefs and his standing beside the African National Congress and the South African Communist Party during the bad old days of apartheid. And Harry Belafonte also said that it was not only Robeson who helped to shape him, but Martin Luther King Jr., who he contributed heavily to contributed intellectually, politically, and importantly, financially. If one wants to understand how Dr. King was able to jet around the country and jet around the world, in fact, you have to look at the check stubs of Harry Belafonte. He also was a performer, a singer, as the clip you just played suggested, an actor. I would suggest films such as Odds Against Tomorrow, or perhaps Kansas City. And he will be sorely missed.
Yeah. How do you suppose a Harry Belafonte manages to be this huge pop star, movie star, and still be so overtly and consistently political over so much time? I mean, you talk about his mentor, Paul Robeson, but Paul Robeson paid a gigantic price for his political engagement. Harry Belafonte seemed like he did here and there, but he maintained a career and managed to, in some ways, fly under the radar.
Well, with all fairness to both figures, Paul Robeson, you may recall, in 1949, crossed the red line when he suggested that if the United States was to wage war against the Soviet Union, he would urge black people not to participate. That was part of his downfall, as well as sponsoring a petition to the United Nations charging the United States with genocide, which was quite embarrassing to the United States authorities on the global scene. That, too, was a red line. Harry Belafonte did many marvelous acts and did many marvelous things, but it's fair to say he did not go as far as Paul Robeson, and in fact, many have not gone as far as Paul Robeson since then.
Yeah, well, most people would be too scared to go as far as Paul Robeson. I mean, there's definitely a price to pay. There are degrees, as you point out. But do you think, when you look as a historian, when you look back at the life of Harry Belafonte, really an amazing life, what do you think he would be most remembered for?
I think it depends on the audience.
Yeah.
I think that for many black people who are mourning his passing, they will probably recall his activity alongside Dr. King. They will recall his participation with his good friend and comrade Sidney Poitier at the March on Washington of 1963, alongside their fellow activists, Marlon Brando, who, as you know, was not only a star actor, but also was a donor to Black liberation movement activities, including the Black Panther Party. So I think that activism will be remembered in the black community in particular.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the amazing thing. I mean, I think, of course, the activism, but the fact that he's able to be an activist and sort of fund the activism of others, as certain other people have done throughout the years, people like Aretha Franklin or, people like that, while still keeping that pop culture success going and never backing off of it, as a lot of people do when they get to a certain level of success. They tame their own politics.
And I think it's also important, as they say nowadays, to give the flowers to those who are trying to walk in the huge footsteps of Harry Belafonte. I'm thinking of Danny Glover, for example, who has roots due north in San Francisco and still resides there, and actually campaigned alongside Harry Belafonte on a number of different important issues and has contributed heavily to various progressive causes. So
yeah, that's true.
There are some who are continuing the tradition.
That's a great point. And, I think the other thing I observed, I didn't personally know Harry Belafonte, but I did meet him a few times. I know that he mentored people, both actors, actresses, artists, and political activists whose names you may not know. People like Bo Taylor, who got the mentorship of Harry Belafonte and leaned on him heavily for advice and just the way forward. And most people don't even think about that.
Well, it's also those who are the branches of the tree produced by Dr. King. I'm thinking of Jesse Jackson, for example, who is still in the land of the living, fortunately. I'm thinking of the former mayor of Atlanta and former congressman from Atlanta, Andrew Young, fortunately still in the land of the living. I think when you see that a great actor and activist and singer like Harry Belafonte has passed on to the land of the ancestors, it's the equivalent of burning down a great library. That is to say, we have suffered a loss. Our political IQ has deteriorated, that is to say, on the generic level, with his passing.
Yeah, I think it's, I think you're right that some of the reporting on his passing may bring up or lead us into kind of historical discussions or remembrances of things that could be helpful in today's, context for people to sort of reconnect with the people that, that showed us how it's done. This is the blueprint for how you can be in more than one space in one time and be effective. When we come forward, Dr. Gerald Horne, I cannot wait to hear what you have to say about yesterday's fall of the anchors, the Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon news. I'm almost certain you have some insight that we perhaps have overlooked. We're talking with Dr. Gerald Horne, and you, if you want to join the conversation, you're invited. 800-920-1580. It's KBLA Talk 1580. We are your ancestors' favorite radio station.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
Meet Joe A,
Hi.
Joe B,
Hello.
and Joe C.
What's up?
3 everyday Joes perfecting their banking with Chase. Joe A is locking his lost debit card with the Chase mobile app. Joe B is cruising toward his new ride with AutoSave. And Joe C's Chase banker is helping him budget to go back to school. Tools that help protect. Support for what's next. One bank that puts you in control. Visit chase.com/checking. Chase. Make more of what's yours.
Chase mobile app is available for select mobile devices. Messaging and data rates may apply. J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, N.A. member FDIC.
At Lowe's, we're always bringing pros more ways to save on the brands you trust. Right now, buy a select Bosch 12-volt Bear tool starting at $99 and get a Bosch 12-volt battery starter kit free. Plus, as an MVPs member, earn up to 3 times the bonus points when you buy select products that you can then redeem for rewards. Because Lowe's knows savings, Lowe's knows pros. Selection varies by location while supplies last. See sales associate for details. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Valid through 4/28. Subject to change.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking. Now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The FAA will be hiring air traffic controllers soon. Applications open June 24th through June 27th. If you know someone between the ages of 18 and 30 who might be interested, please tell them to go to www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply today. The salary range is $103,000 to $164,000. There's also paid training and school. Again, that's www.faa.gov/BE-ATC. Again, that's www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply to be an air traffic controller. This community call to action is brought to you by the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals and KBLA Talk 1580.
Thanks for waking up with Dominique DiPrima on KBLA Talk 1580.
And Dr. Gerald Horne is my guest right now. He is a scholar, he is an author, he is an historian, and a YouTube star. If you go on YouTube and type in Dr. Gerald Horne, you'll find a bunch of lectures that will undoubtedly make you smarter. Before we get into the convo about Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson, we're going to go to Lynette, calling us from Los Angeles. Good morning, Lynette.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. Reparations and memory of our ancestors, and we know the struggle continues, but always to God be the glory. And good morning to Dr. Horne. I'm sad that Mr. Belafonte is not with us anymore. My condolences to his family and fans everywhere, and Miss Christian. And him and Dr. King, and them. I met Miss Belafonte one time, and I was just struck, But I just felt like, wow, you don't see this every day. I mean, in a constellation of stars, he is definitely a supernova, and it's like he to me was more than just an icon entertainer. He was a real, true royalty, real leadership, like Dr. King and them. And I said, there's a big contrast compared to what we see with McCartney and Clarence Thomas and all these clowns running around here who say they are leaders. And they are not, they'd rather protect guns than to protect children, And I hear all this stuff, with this kind of codependency, we can't do nothing about them. We can't impeach nobody. The heck, this bar these clowns, especially Clarence Thomas and all those right-wing judges, that's getting on dark money.
Yeah, Lynette. Do you want to land for me, or can you create a question that maybe Dr. Horne can address?
The amorality that we see because we call wrong right and right wrong. And like I said, the leaders that we have with Gerald Belafonte and them, you don't see every day. And so we got to cultivate that like they were trying to do.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess amorality is relative, maybe. I don't know. Belafonte lived through the Nixon era and, the assassination of his friend, Dr. Martin Luther King, the assassination of his friend, Malcolm X. I don't know. What do you say? Put this in historical context for us, if you would, Dr. Horne.
Well, I understand why Lynette was reluctant to mention the name Gerald Belafonte and Clarence Thomas in the same sentence. Sadly, we are stuck with Clarence Thomas despite his many transgressions, despite his playing fast and loose with ethics regulations, accepting $500,000 vacations on a super yacht from a Texas billionaire. We will not have the pleasure of seeing him impeached and removed from office, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah, it looks unlikely. Do you think that we are in an age of amorality? More than any other time? I feel like there's always been crooks. There's always been, con men. There's always been Trumps. Have they been president? I don't know. What do you say?
Well, I look at that in two ways. On the one hand, there have been scoundrels in North America, I think ever since you had the invasion hundreds of years ago and the dispossession of the indigenous. But today is a kind of unique moment given the rise of China, which is putting so much pressure on the United States and will continue to place pressure on the United States and, in fact, could lead to a shooting war. And I think that has ripple effects throughout the political atmosphere and, in fact, throughout the media atmosphere as well.
When you say a shooting war, what are you referring to? You're talking about an expansion of what's happening in Ukraine? Are you talking about one of the many places in Africa where you see, conflict? Or what are you referring to?
Well, I'm referring specifically to the fact that just a few days ago there were military maneuvers off the coast of China by the U.S. military and their Filipino comrades. Now, imagine if China was engaged in military maneuvers off the coast of Los Angeles, for example, with the Russian military. I think folks would be running around with their hair on fire. And there is a real danger right now of a shooting war between the United States and China. And I think that's one of the reasons why President Macron of France tried to put some distance between himself and the United States, because he doesn't want his country to get dragged into this madness.
How many wars can we handle at once? I'm starting to get to that, that count. I know most of these aren't considered wars per se. When you look at Syria or even Ukraine, it's not our war, supposedly, but it sure feels like it, and it sure spins like it.
Well, I think that as long as the United States has hundreds of military bases abroad, which it does, there's always the possibility of getting dragged into some conflict or, even worse, helping to ignite some conflict. And in that regard, to turn to Africa for a second, I'm happy to see that South Africa is trying to lead the International Criminal Court. I think that that's long overdue. The International Criminal Court in The Hague in the Netherlands has this peculiar penchant for going after leaders in Africa, and that is something I'm sure that South Africa could no longer abide.
You know what? Yeah, I think that we've talked about that before, maybe not on this show, on a different show, about how the International Criminal Court seems to have the same sort of defect as the facial recognition technology. There's a bias when it comes to the shade, the skin tone of the persons in question. And that's why I thought, when they started talking about going after Putin, to me, it seemed like a slippery slope, because then are they going to come after, George W. Bush and Dick Cheney, who clearly are war criminals? Or, what are the boundaries of that? Like, how does the International Criminal Court decide which war criminals they're going to go after and which ones are just fine?
Well, that's part of the hypocrisy. And I think that in order to understand, for example, the crisis that's now unfolding in Sudan, which before the secession of South Sudan a decade or so ago was the largest nation by territory in the African continent, you have to understand the role of the International Criminal Court, because both military factions that are now at each other's throats both fear that if one or the other loses, the loser will be turned over to the International Criminal Court, which means that the ICC is a player in Africa, not only a player, but helping to fan the flames of conflict to the detriment of Africans.
That's deep, Dr. Horne. I never looked at it that way. That is absolutely not supposed to be their role. They're supposed to be a neutral body that demands accountability on the world stage.
But unfortunately, as long as the United States wields disproportionate political influence and particularly military influence, you're going to have a situation where international bodies, including the United Nations, I'm afraid to say, are turned to the advantage of Washington, which almost by definition means turn to the disadvantage of Africa.
Okay, well, this conversation is really fascinating. It almost makes me not even care what's going on with Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson, except for that they seem to shape and influence the opinion of a lot of those of us in this highly impactful nation called the United States. I did not realize that both Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon have hired attorney Brian Friedman to represent them, as both of them have been fired from their respective jobs. And apparently this is the same lawyer that Megyn Kelly got when she was fired from NBC back in 2019. But it does seem kind of, it's a lot. Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon are both huge, giant media stars with big followings and a big influence. What do you make of that?
Well, Tucker Carlson more so.
Yeah.
He probably had the widest, deepest audience in nighttime cable news by several million, in fact. And of course, even the New York Times, which seems to pick its words carefully, at least when it comes to throwing around the R word, meaning racism, they basically charged that Tucker Carlson was a major purveyor of racism. It was Tucker Carlson who helped to popularize the so-called replacement theory, which infuriated and made afraid so many poor Euro-Americans that the Democrats have a plot and a conspiracy to replace them with people from south of the border. Tucker Carlson cost his employer $750 million in a recent lawsuit. I'm referring to the lawsuit brought by Dominion, this vote-counting enterprise, where after the 2020 election, Fox News and Tucker Carlson repeated lies about Donald Trump actually winning the election. Tucker Carlson, of course, revealed as a result of this lawsuit, or it was revealed, that despite his supposedly being a buddy to Donald J. Trump, he said that he hated him passionately. Now, apparently they kissed and made up, but I'm sure that did not necessarily please his employer, the Australian-American billionaire Rupert Murdoch. And then Tucker Carlson might be costing Fox another pretty penny, because there's another lawsuit brought by a former producer, Abby Grossberg, who charges that he created a toxic workplace atmosphere full of sexism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, racism. So Tucker Carlson, in a sense, had to go. Don Lemon is another story.
I mean, but that said, they have insurance that covers a lot of those losses. Not to mention, they get to write some of those payouts off their taxes. So is that really such a big hit? I mean, $750 million. It sounds like a lot of money to anybody, but is it really that much for them, especially for such a highly rated star?
Well, I think so, because even if insurance covers it, that means that your insurance rates will go up tomorrow.
Yeah, that's true.
And then I would like to think that the political atmosphere in the United States is slowly changing. I'm looking at Chicago mayor's race, the Wisconsin judiciary race, won by a pro-choice liberal. I'm thinking of the indictment of Donald J. Trump, further indictments coming along the way. So maybe Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox News, is trying to adjust in light of the changing political atmosphere. That's what I would like to think. Don't press me to back that up.
I know. I read that they were trying to make some changes, some tweaks to Tucker Carlson's show, and he wasn't having it. So that kind of tracks with what you're saying about them trying to adjust to whatever is coming down the pike right now. You said Don Lemon is a different story. Why?
Well, his audience was smaller, number one.
Okay, there's that.
And then he was that rarity, a black gay man at the highest level of the media. That makes him both unique and also subject to unfair attacks. But speaking of unfair attacks, apparently what did him in was his critique of Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor, who's now running for president. On air, he charged that she was beyond her prime because of her age, but he saw that as both sexist and ageist.
It was.
And then okay.
It was. I mean, come on now. You can't say that. This is 2023, homie.
Well, apparently Don Lemon found that out the hard way.
Yeah, I mean, but one wonders, and I know we only have a minute till news, traffic, and sports, but I think because he's done a lot of other dumb stuff, just like we all have. When you're live on the mic, it's perilous over the years, and he hasn't gotten fired for it. He's maybe gotten sent home for a day or reprimanded. And then there was, this other, the interview with that Indian American presidential contender where, they said that might have been the beginning of the end or the end of the beginning for him. But I always wonder what's really happening with management at these institutions, because if you're an on-air person, especially if you do live TV or radio, you can always find something to fire me for. I guarantee you I've said something stupid in the last 30 days. So I think a lot of times, Dr. Horne, I wonder if it's new management, we're going to move back, and I'm getting those messages and signals from CNN. We're moving back towards a more so-called objective news style and moving away from the opinion-based newscasting of the Chris Cuomos and Don Lemons. We'll see. More with Dr. Gerald Horne. Your phone calls are welcome. KBLA Talk 1580.
More of First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Some parents in Duval County, Florida, are rallying behind the district's first black female superintendent. Supporters of Diana Green gathered last night outside the school district headquarters. They're pushing back on claims Green mishandled allegations of misconduct made against 3 teachers at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. Supporters say the allegations against the teachers predate Green's hiring 5 years ago. Less than half of Americans say they would support an assault weapons ban. Only 46% of respondents in a Monmouth University poll say they're for banning future sales of assault weapon sales in the U.S. That's a 9-point drop from a June 2022 poll in which 55% said they would support a ban. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Got a bad crash in North Hills. 2 right lanes are blocked, 405 northbound before Nordoff Street. That's why you're jammed up at Sherman Way. In Sun Valley, got a bobtail truck stall 5 southbound at Hollywood Way, partially blocking the off-ramp, so a bit of a squeeze there. And a crash in Burbank on the 124 westbound at Hollywood Way is stuck in the right-hand lane. That's why you're still from the I-5. Got a street sweeper stalled in Cerritos. It's stuck on the right-hand shoulder, 605 southbound for South Street. That's causing slowing from the 91 freeway. They're waiting for a mechanic to help them get on the way.
If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
If you're a late-night snacker, listen up. Buffalo Wild Wings created a menu of late-night food and drinks starting at $4, 10 till close, full of tasty apps and ice-cold beer to wash it all down. Limited time at participating locations. Offers, days, and times may vary. Drink responsibly. Void or prohibited. Tax and fees extra.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Memphis guard Dillon Brooks was given another example of how LeBron James does not play like an old man. At age 38, LeBron played 45 minutes last night and finished with 22 points, a career-high 20 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 block shots. He also made a dazzling layup in the final second of regulation to send the game into overtime. Not bad for a player who was supposed to be old. The Lakers closed out Memphis by 6 in OT to take a 3-1 lead in the best-of-7 series. Game 5 is Wednesday in Memphis. LeBron is the first Laker to put up 20 points and 20 rebounds in a playoff game since Shaq in 2004. At age 38, LeBron is also the oldest player in NBA history to have a 20-20 game in the regular season or playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tell me you're the boy that girl.
I'm young, gifted, and black. At KBLA Talk 1580, we do more than just talk.
Hey there, I'm Jared Hill, president of the National Association of Black Journalists of Los Angeles, and I just want to say thank you for the benevolent $10,000 donation and scholarships for the next generation of black journalists.
And I'm Haywood Galbraith, photojournalist and founder of the Minority Photojournalism Institute. Thanks, KBLA, for your generous $10,000 scholarship gift to help us train the next generation of black photojournalists.
Congratulations to all the students who will benefit from the scholarship dollars raised at our Black History Month luncheon, honoring black legends in LA media. When we come forward at KBLA Talk 1580, we're bringing everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us. Everybody with us.
Congratulations to Grace Memorial Chapel and Funeral Home for being this week's winner of KBLA's Office of the Week. Your office won lunch for 10, delivered by the original Taco Pete. Congratulations to Grace Memorial Chapel and Funeral Home.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. I'm here with Lisa Stevens, senior business consultant with Chase for Business. Lisa, what's one tip you'd give to business owners here in the Crenshaw area?
I love that you asked that question. I'm originally from Brooklyn, and I grew up in an area that's very similar to Crenshaw. So this is near and dear to my heart. And if I could only leave a business owner with just one, I would tell the business owner to identify their why. And I think that is so important because your why is going to be that strength on those days where you feel like you're struggling. Your why is going to be that stepping stone. Those days that you want to give up, your why is going to be the reason that you get back up.
And how would you advise business owners looking to acquire capital? What do they need to know before stepping inside the branch to ask for funding?
So 3 things. I do want to share this when it comes to the power of capital and just finding those resources. Understand that capital is a 3-part of a business, right? It's not always about the monetary piece, but if you first put that intellectual, right? What do I need to know? That social, who I need to know, that will help you to then package for that monetary piece. So no matter who you're banking with, you should know your banker. Never walk into a bank and you're transactional only.
It's just like Lisa to drop gems. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Heard any other talk radio lately that sounds anything like this? We didn't think so. You're listening to Unapologetically Progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
I bet not. especially not with Dr. Gerald Horne on the phone. That's not something you get everywhere. We sure appreciate your time and your energy on this. You know, I have to ask the obvious question, Dr. Horne, about Biden. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, making his big announcement. He's running.
Well, I think Mr. Biden feels that Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. He is confident that he can defeat Mr. Trump. We shall see if that comes into being, if that comes into play. And even within his own party, he's not really facing a challenge from the left, which could have been predicted a few years ago, but is not on the horizon and probably will not arise. The challenge from Attorney Robert F. Kennedy Jr. probably will not succeed, not to mention I'm not sure what the term is, Marianne Williamson, the therapist. I'm not sure what the
self-help author.
Self-help author.
Yes, we'll go with that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, yeah, right. You think it's more perilous if he's not running against Trump?
Well, I think so. I think that's the contradiction of U.S. politics right now, which is that I'm afraid to say that Governor DeSantis of Florida, who is now on an international tour, he met with the Prime Minister of Japan just the other day, is probably more of a threat to Mr. Biden's reelection chances. But right now, Governor DeSantis is sinking like a stone in the Republican Party polls right now. Doesn't look good. Now, he can still make a comeback, but I don't think that he will.
You don't?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, he's not a very good candidate. If you read the press about him, he's not warm and fuzzy.
No.
As a matter of fact, the Wall Street Journal, and I'm reluctant to repeat this, but it was in the Wall Street Journal, they suggested that he might be on the spectrum of autism, for example, which may explain some of his standoffish tendencies and his abruptness in dealing with people on the rope line, for example. Now, as I said, that's just the Wall Street Journal talking.
Right, but they are kind of a right-leaning, right-leaning publication, so interesting that they would put that out there. And as it turns out, I guess a lot more of us are on the autism spectrum than we previously knew. It can manifest in lots of different ways. Of course, I got to ask you about this. The College Board now sort of flipping and flopping, right? Saying they're going to make more changes to their new AP African American Studies course because people said, and it did appear, that they were sort of kowtowing to DeSantis and that they removed Black Lives Matter from their Black History course, their African American Studies course, along with reparations and then anything having to do with LGBTQ plus folks. And then they added a whole section on Black conservatives. So apparently we would learn about, Larry Elder, but not James Baldwin. Now they're saying they're going to tweak it again. Is that a good thing?
Time will tell. But it's very unfortunate that the folks who provide this advanced placement African American Studies test are twisting in the wind under political pressure, not only from Governor DeSantis, but Governor Youngkin of Virginia, who got elected, basically running against African American Studies.
Yeah.
And what's even more troubling, in my estimation, is that here in the state of Texas, there is a movement in certain counties to shut down public libraries because they're not able to remove books they don't like. And so the idea is you just shut down the entire library. It's like during the civil rights era and then, a few decades ago, where you had certain counties shut down swimming pools because they did not want to have integrated or desegregated swimming pools. In Virginia, they shut down public schools in certain counties for a while because they did not want desegregation. So it seems like we're going back to the future.
Yeah, I didn't read the whole article, but I understand that the state is taking over Houston School District, state of Texas. Your state, Dr. Horne, is that part of this, or is this just one of those situations where the school district is struggling? We've seen several of those here in California.
It's a little bit of both, but also worrisome is the fact that, once again, Tucker Carlson did a show before he was removed, pressuring Governor Abbott of Texas to give a pardon to a white man who killed a Black Lives Matter protester. And Governor Abbott is moving in that direction. So it could be open season on Black Lives Matter protesters in the state of Texas.
You know what? I didn't realize that came from Carlson. But it's really, that is one of the scariest stories that I've heard so far, because, I mean, this guy, not only did he kill a Black Lives Matter protester, he's not like, oh, this is an accident, this was a sad thing. I mean, you look at his text and he's a hardcore racist.
Exactly. And that's why we have to count as a victory the removal of Tucker Carlson, irrespective of the reasons why he was removed, because he was certainly a toxic influence in the media. And let's hope that his replacement does not replicate his toxicity.
As Daniel Perry, that's the name of the guy, this Army sergeant who killed someone at a protest in 2020, and apparently had tweeted about, like, I might have to go kill somebody today and things like that, which to me, I don't know how you can justify that. And I know it gets kind of trite, Dr. Horne, but you think about, had any Black Lives Matter or Nation of Islam or any Black progressives had, sent out tweets even jokingly saying, I'm going to go kill some white people today, and then they killed a white person, there would be under the jail forever, and there would be no DA anywhere, no governor anywhere who would be willing to pardon them.
And I'm sure you saw the story due north of here in Oklahoma, where the sheriff was caught on tape joking about going back to the bad old days of lynching.
Yeah.
And also was threatening journalists with execution as well. We are in a very perilous moment right now, and we need to realize that things are perhaps changing beyond what we could have imagined.
Yeah. Well, we think, well, this is different. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think what's different is we have tapes, right? We got the tape of the LA City Council. We got the tape of those racists talking about how they want to kill journalists. That doesn't mean the conversations weren't happening before. They just probably were not caught on tape.
Well, that's the sad aspect, because it's even worse than it sounds. Because even though people know that they're subject to being taped, they still have loose tongues. You would think that the possibility that this might go on the internet would help to restrain some, but it apparently has not.
Yeah. When we come forward, continuing the conversation with Dr. Gerald Horne. I know he's got, he always has some good news hidden, tucked away for me because I need it. And it's not too late to call 800-920-1580. I do want to ask you when we come forward about the blue check mark battles of Twitter. It's KBLA Talk 1580.
She's reclaiming her time on KBLA Talk 1580. More First Things First with Dominique DiPrima when we come forward.
15 million California Medi-Cal enrollees to have eligibility status reviewed starting this month. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lendistry, story courtesy of CaliforniaBlackMedia.org. Pay attention to your Medi-Cal notices in the mail. As of April 2023, California has 14 months to review the eligibility of 15 million Medi-Cal enrollees after suspending this process throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. An estimated 2 to 3 million Californians may leave the program during this unwinding period. It is critical that enrollees watch out for notifications from local Medi-Cal offices. If you receive a yellow envelope, that means contact information or pertinent information to keep your coverage is missing.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lendistry. Lendistry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lendistry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lendistry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today. Let's get back to business, Los Angeles County. The Economic Opportunity Grant Program is now open. This program is designed to provide financial support to qualified small businesses, micro-entrepreneurs, food industry businesses such as restaurants, and nonprofits in Los Angeles County. Approximately 4,600 grants of up to $2,500 each will be administered to qualified micro businesses that face barriers to accessing capital resources. To learn more about the Economic Opportunity Grant Program, program, visit www.grants.lacounty.gov. The application process is fast and easy. Don't miss the opportunity to get back to business. This program is administered by the County of Los Angeles through its Department of Economic Opportunity and funded in part through a grant from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. The application portal is powered by Lindustry. Visit www.grants.lacounty.gov and get back to business.
The FAA will be hiring air traffic controllers soon. Applications open June 24th through June 27th. If you know someone between the ages of 18 and 30 who might be interested, please tell them to go to www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply today. The salary range is $103,000 to $164,000. There's also paid training and school. Again, that's www.faa.gov-BE-ATC. Again, that's www.faa.gov/BE-ATC to apply to be an air traffic controller. This community call to action is brought to you by the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals and KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
Dr. Gerald Horne is on the air with me this morning. Do you have a blue check mark, Dr. Horne? I see Elon Musk, he keeps changing his mind about how he's going to deal with these blue check marks now that he is the emperor of Twitter. He took away Chadwick Boseman, Kobe Bryant, Beyonce, a whole bunch of people. Then he gave a bunch of them back again, and some folks said they didn't want them back again. And, you know, now like Stephen King, the author, they're fighting on Twitter. And some people say that if you change your Twitter name, you'll lose the blue check mark. So they're doing it as a strategy because they don't want it to seem like they're paying and playing along with his little game. It's one of many issues we're seeing on Twitter now. Thoughts?
Well, I think that Elon Musk is driving Twitter into the ground. When he bought it a year or so ago, it was worth about $40 billion. Now it's worth about half that. But I think that part of the story about Elon Musk and Twitter actually raises a very profound question. And I'm speaking of the fact not only that he has roots in apartheid South Africa, but it has been little recognized that after the arrival of democracy in South Africa in 1994, you had a kind of migration of many of the European settler population to these shores. That would include Peter Thiel, Thiel, one of Donald Trump's closest comrades, a billionaire in Silicon Valley who helped to finance Facebook and PayPal, along with Elon Musk, for example. He bought a U.S. Senator, J.D. Vance, who got elected in November 2022. I'm speaking of Roloff Botha. Now, that name should strike a chord because he is descended from a prominent apartheid family. He's also a power in Silicon Valley. And I think that the journalists haven't done a very good job of connecting the dots with regard to this migration from apartheid South Africa, particularly to California, and what that means for the very racist atmosphere that's developing in this country.
That's really interesting. You know, Elon Musk has vehemently denied this idea that he got his start from the money that came from an emerald mine that was supposed to have been owned by his father. He has gone on Twitter repeatedly to say that's not true. And now Errol Musk, the father, who's kind of strange, but anyway, he says that, no, it is true. It might not have been an official mine. It might have just been me exploiting a few African workers, you know, to get emeralds out the ground, he says. But Elon saw the emeralds at our house. He knew I was selling them, he said. And what was really interesting about this interview with Errol Musk is that he said that this was when, in his words, Zambia was a free-for-all. When was that exactly? He said this was during a time when Zambia was a free-for-all and everyone was just, he says there was no formal mine. It was a rock formation protruding from the ground. There were no signed agreements. He says it was done on a handshake with the Italian man at a time when Zambia was a free-for-all.
I think that that's fiction.
Really?
I think that the elder Mr. Musk might be digging himself a hole in an attempt to splatter his offspring, Elon Musk. And I think both of them need to undergo a very serious scrutiny and investigation and face the music, if appropriate.
Interesting. So you think they're both telling tall tales. Let's go to Mimi calling from Jacksonville. Hi, Mimi.
Hi, Dominique.
You're on with Dr. Horne. What's on your mind?
Well, this is my first time calling your show, and
Welcome.
I want to keep it short but sweet. I just want to say I like your style, and I like your show a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I am happy to have you as a new member of our KBLA delegation, and I hope you'll call me again.
Oh.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm not going to ask you to respond to Mimi, Dr. Horne, because I think you've been dealing with my shows and my style for at least 3 different programs and probably 3 different decades. Or at least 2 different decades.
I like your show and your style too, Dominique.
Thank you, Dr. Horne. I love that you're over here calling BS on Elon's dad, because I guess he can say anything, but I do think you're right. We need to do a better job. I think there was a long period of time where we were just idolizing everything Elon Musk did only because he was rich and in the tech space, instead of in everyone thinking he was a genius until he started saying a lot of really dumb things.
But not only that, but studies and journalism has shown that since he took over Twitter, the level of racism has gone up on Twitter, the level of anti-Semitism has gone up on Twitter, the level of misogyny has gone up on Twitter. And the only surprise is that this has not been connected to his being nurtured in apartheid South Africa, for example. I mean, the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I didn't realize that there were so many folks who had migrated out, fled the end of apartheid, and that so many were in California. That in itself is rather chilling. It's Get Out, the sequel. We're talking with Dr. Gerald Horne, and when we come forward, before we hand off to Tavis Smiley like we do every day around this time, I want to hear what is on his agenda, what's on his list of concerns or celebrations, things he's tracking, and the headlines that we may have missed. That's next on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580 is an intervention. When we come forward, includes you. KBLA Talk 1580, turning pain into power. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 joins you in standing for voting rights. When We All Vote is a leading national nonpartisan initiative on a mission to change the culture around voting and to increase participation in each and every election by helping to close the race and age gap. Created by Michelle Obama, When We All Vote brings together individuals, institutions, brands, and organizations to register new voters across the country and advance civic education for the entire family and voters of every age to build an informed and engaged electorate for today and generations to come. When We All Vote empowers their supporters and volunteers to take action through voting, advocating for their rights, and holding their elected officials accountable. Please visit whenweallvote.org to stand up for your rights, voting rights. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Access granted.
In a survey conducted by the public opinion research firm Eviderus, KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerged as the station of choice for black audiences in the Los Angeles media market and beyond. The survey also revealed that the vast majority of black audiences are concerned about the lack of black-owned media and are more likely to listen to talk radio that focuses on issues that impact the black community. For some reason, the other talk stations haven't quite figured that out.
If you think about KFI, well, KFI only has like a 3% black listenership. 3%. So there's a good 97% out there to support a station like KBLA.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Some people won't give you the real talk on drugs, but it's time we know the facts. Fentanyl is killing people. It's a powerful opioid, often made illegally and commonly mixed with illicit drugs. It can even be pressed into counterfeit pills that resemble prescription medications. Just 2 milligrams, about the size of a few grains of sand, can potentially be lethal. This isn't an ad to scare you, but it is an ad to make you think twice. Get the facts. Go to realdealonfentanyl.com. This message is brought to you by the Ad Council.
The conversation continues right now with Dominique DiPrima on First Things First.
And I so appreciate you being with us today. Don't forget to stop by the social media KBLA 1580 on all the platforms, especially on YouTube, where we are streaming right now. And of course, you can find me at DiPrima Radio. That's DIPRIMA Radio on all platforms, including YouTube. And no, you will not see a check mark. Dr. Gerald Horne, well, just Google him. And or go to YouTube and type in his name, and you're going to find a bunch of his lectures, or stop by a bookstore or Amazon and get the books. Dr. Horne, what are you tracking that I didn't ask you about this morning?
Well, this is very important. Julie Su, S.U., Chinese American, Asian American, nominated by Mr. Biden to be Labor Secretary. This is a position, a cabinet position, that has oversight over the workforce, oversight over those who sell their labor for a wage, which overwhelmingly includes the black community, which is overwhelmingly working class. She may not win that position, not least because of opposition from Senator Manchin, the conservative Democrat from West Virginia. I would hope that our community would weigh in on her behalf, because this cabinet position probably has more impact on our lives than any other cabinet position in Washington.
Is Manchin still, is he still with our party? I mean, my party, the Democratic Party? Because I feel like he's been blasting Biden in the news lately and really even moving further to the right.
Well, he's facing a tough pre-election campaign from the Republicans. Recall that Mr. Trump won West Virginia by double digits, hefty double digits. And Mr. Manchin wants to keep his job. And so he's trying to send signals that he is not progressive. And he's doing a good job of sending that signal.
It's amazing that he has to send that signal. But what else do you want to flag, Dr. Horne? We got about 60 seconds here.
Well, I would really like to reiterate the point about South Africa leaving the International Criminal Court. I think that that's going to cause a stampede in Africa. Those nations that have joined the International Criminal Court will be departing. That will help to nullify any impact that this court in The Hague, the Netherlands, has. And I think that's all for the good. It's a step forward. And I salute the African National Congress of South Africa for taking a vanguard role in this position.
Yes, indeed. Oh, we're out of time. We're not going to have time to talk about Charles's coronation. Fancy that.
Nor will we have time to talk about the fact that Charles Barkley, the rotund basketballer, is coming to CNN. I think that he may be seen as a de facto replacement for Don Lemon.
Charles Barkley is the new Don Lemon. Oh, my goodness. That was a good one, Dr. Horne, but you might be right. As always, Dr. Gerald Horne, I so appreciate you joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know good and well, Tavis Smiley is up next, and he's got a great show for you. I know that he's got an amazing show on tap. I'm Dominique DiPrima. I'm going to do a little better with getting back to my daily quotes. Today I'm going to Harry Belafonte. He says, although slavery may have been abolished, the crippling poison of racism still persists, and the struggle continues. I'm Dominique DiPrima. I will see you on social media, and tomorrow we'll have an important update on the case of Anthony McLean as I'm joined by James Farr in Hour 1. History's now, and we are making it together. Until next time, one love.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Some parents in Duval County, Florida, are rallying behind the district's first black female superintendent. Supporters of Diana Green gathered last night outside the school district headquarters. They're pushing back on claims Green mishandled allegations of misconduct made against 3 teachers at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. Supporters say the allegations against the teachers predate Green's hiring 5 years ago. Less than half of Americans say they would support an assault weapons ban. Only 46% of respondents in a Monmouth University poll say they're for banning future sales of assault weapon sales in the U.S. That's a 9-point drop from a June 2022 poll in which 55% said they would support a ban. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
Got a bad crash in North Hills. 2 right lanes are blocked 405 northbound before Nordoff Street. That's why you're jammed up at Sherman Way. In Sun Valley, got a bobtail truck stalled 5 southbound at Hollywood Way, partially blocking the off-ramp, so a bit of a squeeze there. And a crash in Burbank on the 124 westbound at Hollywood Way is stuck in the right-hand lane. That's why you're still from the I-5. Got a street sweeper stalled in Cerritos. It's stuck on the right-hand shoulder, 605 southbound for South Street. That's causing slowing from the 91 freeway. They're waiting for a mechanic to help them get on the way.
If your company needs to spring into efficient hiring, then check out Indeed. Their powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, interview, and hire candidates. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
This is the KBLA